They gave me a chair bolted to the floor of a room that used to belong to someone else.
God talk, Sem.
The walls still carried the Osreth's own signage, pale glyphs stacked in vertical columns, and someone on our side had taped a strip of duct tape over the worst of the bloodstains, without bothering to scrub them first. That was the Hallow Array now. Ours, technically, since the boarding action 3 days prior. Mine, and Mikel's, and 41 other names on a manifest, minus the 6 we'd lost taking it. I was not there to be thanked. The array still hummed the way Osreth installations hum, a low frequency you feel in your molars before you hear it. And I remember thinking it was strange to be escorted, under guard, through a building I'd helped take, past crates of our own field rations stacked where their supply lockers used to be. 3 days is not long enough to make a place yours. It's long enough to start forgetting it was ever anyone else's. The Osreth physician sat across from me with his hands folded the way their kind do when they're bracing for something, 4 long fingers laced over 4 more, a posture I'd only seen them use in surrender footage. His name, as near as our translators could render it, was Sael Voren. He'd been part of the base's medical cadre before we took it, and now he was a prisoner who got to keep his coat because command wanted him cooperative, not comfortable. 2 of his staff sat behind him. Neither had said a word since I walked in. "You understand why you're here," Voren said. I told him I had a rough idea. He said he wanted to hear me say it anyway, so I did. Command wanted to know whether his captured medical cadre could be trusted to treat human casualties going forward, under guard, without their own chain of command. If he refused, the cadre went back into holding, and we lost the only staffed sickbay on this rock that wasn't a converted supply closet. I did. They'd pulled the internal feed from the corridor outside sickbay, the one that ran the night we retook the reactor deck, and someone up the chain had decided a physician should watch it before they decided what kind of physician he was going to be for us. The footage started clean, timestamp in the corner, my own voice flat and businesslike, telling command I had one down, and it wasn't a bandage problem. Mikel had taken shrapnel through the chest plate on the reactor deck, a piece of his own kit, driven backward by a round that shouldn't have found the seam it found. I'd been 40 meters back, running relay on the breach charges, and by the time I got to him, his suit's diagnostic panel had already gone from amber to the flat gray line that means the suit has stopped trying. On the footage, you can watch me arrive, you can watch me check the panel, and you can watch me ignore what it says. I remember the weight of him more than I remember the decision. How a man goes heavier the moment his body stops doing any of the work of holding itself together. How you learn to read that weight through 2 layers of suit before your eyes have even finished confirming it. Voren leaned forward slightly, watching not the screen, but me, the way you'd watch a specimen that had started doing something it wasn't supposed to do. "Your suit's medical system logged a systole at 0411, he said. "No cardiac output, no respiration. Your own equipment told you this man was dead." "It told me his heart had stopped," I said. "That's not the same thing where I'm from." He didn't answer that. He let the footage keep running instead, because the footage made the point better than either of us could. You can see me strip his chest seal in 11 seconds, which I know because command timed it later and put it in a report I was never supposed to read. You can see me start compressions with one hand, while the other hand fights the injector cartridge out of my thigh pouch. And you can see, if you know what you're looking at, that I'm doing both wrong on purpose, fast and shallow instead of the textbook depth. Because a chest that's had shrapnel through it doesn't want the textbook depth. It wants to survive the next 90 seconds, and the textbook can catch up later. 4 minutes in, the footage shows my relief squad arriving to find me still working, and it shows the squad medic, Okonkwo, start toward me with the black bag we carry for exactly this outcome, and it shows me telling her, in language the feed captured and the translators rendered without softening, that she could put the bag away and pick up a light instead, because I needed to see what I was doing. 6 minutes, Voren said, not to me now, more like he was reading it off a chart in his head. Your species' own field manual designates 6 minutes, without return of spontaneous circulation, as the threshold past which continued effort is classified as. He paused, and I watched him choose the word carefully. Unproductive. I've read the manual. You exceeded it by 11 minutes. I know how long it took. On the screen, at the 9-minute mark, you can see the second responder. That was Dre, our line medic, who'd come running the second word reached him, kneel down across from me and start to say something, and you can see me shake my head without looking up, without breaking rhythm, and you can see Dre change what he was about to say into something else, and pick up compressions on my count instead of his own. Voren's staff had gone very still behind him. One of them, the younger one, had her hand pressed flat against her own chest, an Osreth gesture I didn't know the meaning of yet, and wouldn't ask about until later. At 14 minutes, on the recording, there's a sound. It isn't dramatic, it's a monitor chirping back to life, and my own voice, cracked and furious with relief, telling command that I had a pulse, and could someone get the actual medic up here now, because I was out of things to try if he crashed again. He didn't crash again. Mikkel Ann was 3 decks down at that moment, in a bunk that used to belong to whoever these people were before we took their base from them, breathing on his own, and complaining about the smell of the recycled air, which by every account he'd been doing since the second day. Voren shut the display off himself. He didn't ask permission. 14 minutes, he said again, quieter this time. You had every instrument telling you the outcome was decided. Your own doctrine told you the outcome was decided, and you simply declined to accept it. That's a fair way to put it. That is the thing that frightens us, he said, and I want to be precise about how he said it, because it wasn't dramatic either. It was clinical, the way you'd describe a structural weakness in a hull. We understand weapons. We understand endurance, strength, the things your species does that break our instruments. Those are variables. We can model a variable. What we cannot model is a species that treats a verdict as a suggestion. Your manual gave you a number. Your equipment gave you a reading. Your own medical officer would have told you, at minute 6, to stop and grieve. And instead, you did the arithmetic on how much more you were willing to give before you'd allow yourself to fail. That is not courage. Courage has a ceiling. This did not have one. He said it the way a man describes a load-bearing wall he's just discovered isn't load-bearing at all, has never been, and now the whole structural model has to be redrawn. Watching him say it, I understood this wasn't really about Mikkel anymore. He was doing arithmetic on every human casualty report he'd ever be handed from now on, and none of the old numbers were holding. I didn't say anything for a while. Outside the small port window behind him, one of our shuttles was running a supply pass along the ridge, throwing a long shadow across the same rock his people had probably watched shuttles cross for years, before we came and made it ours. He'd have done the same for me, I said finally. That's not a policy. It's just what he'd have done. Voren looked at me a long moment, and something moved behind his eyes that our translators had no word for. Something that wasn't quite fear, and wasn't quite grief. Closer to the specific dread of a man recalculating a number he'd trusted his whole life. Then I understand your species less than I believed I did an hour ago, he said. And I believed I understood it very little. He signed the cooperation order without further argument. His staff filed it under my name, misspelled, and under Mikkel's, correct. And somewhere in the base's new archive there is 14 minutes of a man's flatline sitting beside a footnote written by a physician who has never once, in the months since, asked me to explain it again. He stopped asking because he already knows the answer isn't a number. It never was. I saw Mikkel 2 days after the debrief, sitting up in that borrowed bunk with the recycled air complaint still going strong, and I didn't tell him about the 14 minutes, not the real shape of them. I told him the medic saved him, which was true enough. Some things you carry so the other person doesn't have to. Voren understood that too in the end, though it took him longer to say so than it took him to be afraid of it.